Hello, everybody. Welcome to Radical Ready Live. Pat,
Greetings.
how's it
Greetings.
going?
It's going okay. Going okay. It's
Good.
like springtime here in Minneapolis. It's about 40 degrees. The snow's melting. Everyone kind of goes nuts.
I know. I know. It's I was in for those who joined last week, I was in sunny Miami and it feels like I'm still there.
It's a it's a
Almost.
mindset. It's a mindset.
It's
You
a
got to take it with
mindset,
you.
yeah. At least looking out the window it does. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, Pat, I don't know how much longer I can do the hat.
Yeah. I think
It's
I
it's
think
like
maybe April 1st is going to be your last day.
yeah, 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 unless we get a couple cold weeks and I can keep it, I can extend it. But then I have to put them in a drawer and bring them out in September. So it was a very sad moment for me. So we have a fun and deep conversation to have today. And I guess first, Pat, what's new in your week? And I know you're going skiing next week, I believe.
Yeah. So that definitely is the sort of has been the extracurricular activity for me this week, preparing for next week. But I'm so excited. So myself, my wife Jennifer, my sister-in-law George, Jennifer's sister, and our three dogs. We're all jumping in the car. We're going to drive to Colorado. So it's like a 2 day trip. We're going to drive over the weekend and then 5 days of
Yeah,
skiing next week. Staying at an Airbnb up there. Just going to be great to be up in the mountains. It's a great time to be in the mountains too because it's the snow's still good, but the weather's getting warmer and the sun's warmer, and just really
yeah.
looking forward to the change of scenery because we have, like, probably most people listening, with the exception of you, Dan. Um, no one's gone anywhere. We've been stuck, so it's
I've
just
been,
nice to
yeah,
go. And I still haven't,
it was,
and I still haven't flown yet. I know you've finally taken the plunge, but at
I
least
did,
we're
I
leaving the
had
city.
guilt. I had guilt. It was, yeah, but it was necessary and kept, stayed very safe, mask all the time, but um, sometimes sunshine is needed, as we say.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, yeah. So I think a couple things, just some updates. Again, I love there's so many of you coming on live here. So Jess Von Bank, you're going to be on live in a moment. So good to see you. Kristen, thank you. You're back again. And I think you've been every week. So good to see you. Chris Reese, as always.
Kristen Nordling.
Elsa, back on again. Heidi, good to see you.
Hey, Heidi.
Gislin, great to see you. And we have some Leap Genners, which we're going to talk about Leap Gen in a moment on. Josh, so good to see you. Oh, I just saw Sonia pop on. Sonia,
Hey, Sonia.
welcome. We're talking about sunshine.
Oh yeah,
She's in the heart
we
of
just
it.
yeah we just chatted with her yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so many people are popping on, so we'll just keep chatting for a few minutes, and then Jess, we're going to bring you on. And um, today we have Jess Von Bank from LeapGen, and Jason Aberbook was planned, but Jason is caught up in client meetings, and I will just say that this is a testament to the fact that LeapGen will prioritize clients over marketing and social media events. So kudos to LeapGen. We're important. We're not nearly as important as clients. So we will get Jason on again, but we have Jess, and
That's right, Jess. Who needs Jason? You can
exactly,
you can cover it all. we
exactly,
we're in good hands.
yeah. Um, let's see. Josh thinks yes. Jess will go get him. We know that for sure. So I'm just going to jump in and kind of start to talk about the topic a little bit today, Pat. And this is a topic that if you had a hidden mic and you listened to Pat and I chatting, during the day or after work or over a beer, this is something that's near and dear to us, and we debate and talk about on a regular basis. And really, it's the realities of societal polarization and the impact that this is having and will continue to have within workplace culture. And a lot of this, I think we're starting to see. A lot of this we haven't seen yet. And I believe, and I think we're going to talk about this today, it's starting to cast a bit of a dark shadow. So the goal of today is clearly not to solve everything, but we want to begin to normalize this conversation. We want to raise awareness. We want to have open, honest, impactful dialogue, and we want to really think about what can we do to begin to future-proof ourselves, our leaders, and our organizations. Um, So Pat, what are your hopes for today's conversation?
Yeah, you framed it really well, Dan. I mean, this is we kind of describe it as like the elephant in the room, or increasingly. And we do so much work to think about employee experiences at organizations, but there's this sort of, to kind of get philosophical, there's like this meta level that's happening. In some ways, this is what we'll get into with Jess and the team, but we saw a lot of social injustice movements last summer, which were certainly a part of it, and incredibly important. But then there's this other piece, and this is to be clear, this frame we're talking about is just to kind of jump to it. We're talking about political polarization, different value systems, different ways of kind of moving through life and moving through work. And yeah, it's this reality that, well, I guess here's to kind of start to frame the question: are we moving into two separate existences and worlds with different value systems? Are we as individuals going to think about where we buy products from, where we go on social media, where are the places we work? Who are the family members we talk to and or friends that we have? Are we going to kind of reduce that down to what feels like a safe place for us? Or are we going to do that hard work, many ways as a democracy, as a broader society, to work hard and engage and have these conversations? So this is really beginning to land squarely in the laps of organizations as they start to think about, well, do we need to respond to this? And there's a lot of pressure already on organizations to take a stand on social justice issues or climate justice issues. But then what does that do if that alienates 10 or 20% of your workforce? And this is what we're going to drop into today.
Yeah. I mean, and that we've been talking a lot about values, Pat, over the last few episodes, and the importance of reviewing them and really living them. And I think this is a big question. I mean, what is the responsibility of organizations to take a stand? And what does that mean when you take a stand? So who do you invite to the table when we think about culture? And I think this is there's no great answer with this, and it's going to be this is why we want to start to normalize this conversation. So I think today I want to break this into kind of 4 sections. We'll be talking about acceptance. We'll be talking about common ground. We'll be talking about having an open mind, and then we'll be talking about change. And I think we can really frame an amazing conversation with Jess, which we will bring on in a second. And I want to now talk a little bit about Jess's background. Most of you probably know Jess. Everybody knows Jess. She is the head of marketing at LeapGen, and she has, I think in her profile, she mentioned she has had a 17-year obsession with connecting talent to opportunity and shaping the future of work, and now living and responding the now of work. And we're really great friends with her, and we're really proud to have her on the show and all the great work that she and LeapGen and Jason have been doing. So, without further ado, I am going to click on your name. I'm getting really good at Crowdcast now.
But the trick, Dan, is not to talk about how good you are at it while you do it. You just do it, and it just happens. That's your next step of
it is, it's
reaching excellence.
It's that confidence side. And I'm going to have to ask Jess, when you've been invited. I see Jason's name here.
You see Jason's name?
Yeah.
How's that possible?
It's like, should I invite him, or is this? Do we have an impersonator on?
Like he's in here? That might be. I don't know.
Okay.
I've got it.
Leah is our show producer when we do this on Fridays. She says.
We get a little peek behind the curtain here on the RADICL show of the LeapGen production.
So Jess, welcome.
Thank you. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing good.
Good. How are you?
How are you?
Fantastic. Sitting in my. I'm glad I have so much natural light in my home. I've got skylights everywhere. All this sunlight is pouring in because I haven't been outside for a while. So I'm just soaking it in through the windows. What a beautiful day, though.
Yeah.
So Jess, do you move to that? Do you have different optimum spots to to do meetings from in the house, depending on where the light is throughout the day?
Aha, that's a good question, right?
Chase the light.
Yeah, I do sometimes. This is my sunroom, which naturally gets the most sun. It's also very echoey in here, and I have to record a podcast later. It's not ideal for recording. So my only carpeted rooms are bedrooms, and I don't prefer to be on camera in my bedroom necessarily.
Yeah.
So yes, it's weird. These are the COVID things we think about, like how to turn different spaces in your home into workspaces you're willing to share.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jess, thanks for joining us. And yeah, you're going to have to take on the personality of Jason and yourself in this call. So we can do a little,
Easy.
go back and forth.
Yeah.
So Jess, when we were promoting this, you wrote a quote last night in one of the posts that I love, and it's talking about designing experiences for the beautifully diverse and complex group of people that is your workforce. So to me, that's sort of that is what we're trying to do. And I guess before we get going, maybe give us some thoughts on what did you mean by that, and what is your hope for today's conversation?
Yeah, when you suggested polarization as a topic to unpack, it's an interesting word, and it's easy to go to politics because that's a great example of a spectrum with two ends of a spectrum. And we don't recognize that there's actually lots of degrees in between. And polarization, when you think about it, is really an unwillingness to live in the in-between. You're at one end or the other. And I think as human beings, we're not wired necessarily to live in the ambiguous and the uncertain and the gray area. And so in a weird way, I think that polarization is almost a product of human survivalism. We believe that there's a way to be and think and survive. And polarization is being unwilling to accept that there's anything outside of that. That's how we survive as creatures. And so I think that all of the change and the turmoil that we've been navigating together is a great testament to the spectrum that actually exists, to the fact that everything is ambiguous, everything is subject to change. And if we're going to coexist as humanity, I think we need a lot more, and we've learned a lot more empathy. I hope we've had and embraced opportunities to seek to understand what we don't understand, and really sort of accept that it's natural and it's actually quite beautiful that we are all along the spectrum, every single one of us. And so when I think about a workforce as a living, breathing organism, really understanding that it's complicated, it's layered, it's multifaceted, it's diverse, and that's good. That's a beautiful thing. But then how do you build culture? And what are the ties that bind when it comes to that?
One of the challenges, Jess, that's a beautiful way to frame it. But let's talk about some of the challenges that have been happening over the last year or so. We've gone through, one of the probably most unique periods in modern history over the last year on multiple fronts. Obviously the pandemic, the social justice movements of the summer, and terrible things that happened after the murder of George Floyd. And, we're all in Minneapolis here, so we were we were kind of at ground zero for this. And then the other one that's kind of out there too, I'm showing my politics, but also thinking about climate justice too. And there's the realities of that. And we have, things happening here in the Twin Cities around whether it's, Line 3 in northern Minnesota, or whether it's around more broadly, the kind of some, increasingly accepted realities that, if you think of what even happened last week in Texas with the cold snap, like things are changing, and like, so there's, so anyway, those are kind of those things that are happening at the meta level in organizations. And what we're seeing, at least from my observation, is many organizations now have to take a stand on this, right? And organizations say, yes, Black Lives Matter, we are for Black Lives Matter. We believe in climate change, and then we start to build sort of a value system around that. And Dan and I, I'm sure you probably do too, Jess, support the idea of organizations. We think it's, the research certainly shows that if you don't take a stand, you're going to increasingly alienate a lot of workers. But what happens when you do take that stand, and there's a percentage of workers in an organization that just don't believe in that, and and as organizations shift and change, so then you get into the beginnings of this, this framing up this polarization challenge. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of I think that's part of like what's happening on the outside, and then so increasingly we're kind of confronted to have to deal with it inside the organization.
Yeah.
Dan, I don't know if you want to pick up on that, Dan, or Jess, to go ahead and jump in.
Well, I'll say, last summer at LeapGen, we formed a community. We podcast under the Now of Work title. We have a show like this. And on this show that we started doing last year, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary. And we created this community and this space as a place for people to show up and talk about things that mattered, worried them, give them literally moral support, ask questions, not necessarily have all the answers. And we brought up, shortly after George Floyd happened last summer, Jason and I were carrying on a conversation just like this, and we were talking about the impact of George Floyd and how to talk about race at work and how to address trauma in your workforce and the notion of psychological safety. And we polled the audience that was in the conversation with us and said, wait, time out. Do you feel your workplace is a safe space for you? And 75% of our audience did not consider their workplace to be a safe space. So before we can even talk about how to take a stand on the values that your company and the people in it will espouse, we have way bigger work to do. You have to make sure people actually feel safe showing up at work as their whole self, whatever their belief system is, whatever values they already hold. Before you can do any values alignment or take any stand on anything, you have to make sure people feel like they can show up and have a voice and feel safe and empowered in a workspace setting. And I don't think that that is broadly true today, which is unfortunate. But then, yes, to your point, Pat, we want nothing more than to feel a sense of purpose about our work and to connect to each other through shared values. That's the aspirational goal, but I think we need to start with that sense of safety and letting people show up as themselves at work. And that's why I think the DEI lens is really important in this conversation. That, fostering a culture of inclusion, creating a sense of belonging, giving people values to connect to. And here's the important part, values that are bigger than ourselves. When we talk about taking a stand and what about my belief system and, what if we don't agree on it? We don't have to agree on everything. What we can agree on is humanity. And if we all connect to something that's bigger than each of us individually, that can be the tie that binds. But I think there's empathy to get there. There's a lot of courageous conversations that need to happen to allow people to come to that space and connect there together.
Yeah, you bring up some incredible points there, and I think, so when we talk about creating a safe place, I think we want to also really define what do we mean by that, and it's obviously a safe place physically. It's a safe place around your coworkers, and it's also a safe place where you can bring your ideas, you can bring your point of view, you can bring your perspective. You can bring your fear, right? And I think this is something we don't allow for. Keep your fear at home, and we become fearful in talking about what really matters to us in the workplace. And I think we have to create a safe place that allows for that. And I think this is a challenge for organization, and I think it really is going to start to require managers who are upskilled and really can understand it and engage in conversations where we can. Allow for the whole person to really express themselves before we even start getting to an organizational value system alignment. So, I have a question, but Pat, jump in.
Oh yeah, and this is where it's interesting, this boundaries conversation around from several different perspectives. So, as you know, Jess, we're big fans of this idea of the whole person experience, right? And the idea we need to take a broader, we need to accept the fact that the boundaries between work and life, Dan's dealing with the conference phone, and they're obviously speaking of boundaries.
The warranty on your car is about to expire, Dan.
Exactly.
That's exactly what the kind of calls we get on it.
Oh, man. Dan, the trick is to do a quick answer hang up. I just do double click on the Polycom. Right. So we accept this idea of boundaries between work and life have been removed with this sort of, the now of work and just the reality. And certainly that's a big part when we talk about whole person experience. We said we got to take this wider lens in thinking about our employees. We need to think about them more wholly as people. We need to realize the unique amount of kinds of stress they're carrying, the different environments and circumstances that they're dealing with, and that's really important. And then, but this is where I think I'm going to end up being the devil's advocate in this conversation, which is fine, because I don't want to be, but it feels like I need to be. But then
That's
we go
you can have it.
Oh yeah, great. So, but then is there like a ring beyond that, which I'm going to use my, French theorist lens on this, but it's which is like sort of a meta level where there's sort of external forces that are maybe instantly polarizing, and we kind of talked about this earlier, where when we get into that ring, then we get into these very quick snap polarization things. So you know what I mean. So, and if we're going to think about the whole person, there's the kind of the shared value zone, and then there's the area maybe outside of it that isn't shared value. And I think this is the challenge, and maybe part of the solution, the way you described it, Dan. Managers need to be really skilled to kind of be able to navigate those boundaries, because if they are going to broaden out to have a conversation, like I was just thinking of the hypothetical, which is we talk about the idea of safety at work, and I love this research that's been out there. But what if one person's idea of safety at work is having a firearm with them? I'm just using that as an extreme example, right? And that and then so the organization needs to take a stand. No, you can't have firearms here, which is they have a right to do. But that person's like, yeah, but I feel safer with a firearm because I just do. It's part of my value system. And then you get at a point of conflict, with that. And that's an extreme example. But it's I'm sure organizations have had to deal with that, so then how do you navigate that, and you can obviously have rules, and that's why we create rules, but then it does get at, a manager can find themselves in a tricky, sticky situation conversation wise with something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point about leadership and just day-to-day managers. I think so many managers are equipped to manage tasks and projects, and they're literally the back end office stuff. They're great at that stuff, but people management, people leadership is a way different animal, and we don't do enough training and upskilling for your everyday line managers. There's inspired leadership. There's the stuff we read all the books about and all of that, but everyday people showing up for their team in ways that matter is a huge area of opportunity, I think, in this coming wave of work, especially when we're not connected in the usual ways. And I love your example. A super simple example is, why do we have dress code at work? Well, because you have to normalize some things. You have to give people some guardrails. And I think it's about giving examples of expected behaviors that, listen, this is who we are and how we operate generally. And then here's the barbed wire fence. Run wild within the barbed wire fence. But there is a fence. Like, we do have some guardrails. And this is what this value looks like in practice. This is what this behavior looks like in practice. And we do this at Leap Gen. Our values are love, energy, audacity, and proof. That's the leap in Leap Gen. And we give specific examples of what those values look like in practice. And we call each other out for them regularly. We celebrate them publicly. We show what it looks like to lead a client relationship with love. That sounds really ambiguous. It's easy to be a cheerleader for love, but what does it look like in practice? What does audacity look like in practice? We don't want everybody to be wildly audacious. That could be risky from a business strategy standpoint. We can't run with every crazy idea and then celebrate people who are constantly breaking rules. So what does audacity actually look like in practice? And so I think if you give some guardrails and if you give specific examples of those behaviors, this is why this value is important to us. This is how it's going to help our business and our people grow. And this is what it looks like. And then you celebrate repeated behaviors. I think that's a great place to start. And that's something any manager can work with, I think.
Yeah. Jess, I wanted to ask you about your values. You kind of beat me to it, but I want to follow up on that, because so Leap Gen, as Jess said, has four, just for me, and I think everyone would agree, incredible values: love, energy, audacity, and proof, like Jess just stated. So my question is, so you also lead branding and marketing at the organization, and so in Leap Gen, I think clearly has a perspective and has a point of view, right? And you take a stand. And I think those who know your organization are very proud of that. So how do you, build a culture, reinforce those values, but also invite others to the table who might be, from a societal standpoint, not 100% aligned. They might be able to show love and energy on audacity and proof, and work within that construct, but there's a different societal value system at play. Is that okay? And is there a line? Do you ask the employee to sort of check some of that at the door, or do you need to check some of your belief systems at the door and find common ground? And that's the question: is how do you find common ground and connect when these differences clearly exist? And this is sort of that elephant in the room that I think we need to talk about, because it's very real. I'm just curious how you at LeapGen, or you personally consult on this.
Yeah, as the head of marketing for a brand that's very values driven and very people focused, it is an interesting question. And my goal is to build a craveable brand. I want to have the kind of brand out there that people can literally feel. Like, you should be able to feel what it looks like and feels like to be part of our family. And I try to give examples of that in every piece of content, in the expertise we put out in the market. Every time you experience us in an event, LeapGen has a feeling and an emotion with it. And that's what I want people to connect to. So back to the notion of it's wonderful to invite and celebrate diversity. And I don't necessarily and I think about our brand as an employer brand too. We're growing like crazy. So we want to attract customers, but we want to attract people who can do this work with us. And so as an employer brand, any employer on the planet should want to attract diverse thought and lived experience and even values to some perspective. But then there's that whole notion of cultural fit. And I hate cultural fit. If you're seeking cultural fit, you're riddled with affinity bias. I want people who think like me, who will naturally fit in. There's no friction. We are the same people. And what a wonderful cultural fit that will be. I actually think the goal should be values alignment. We believe passionately about the same things. How we embrace that and how that looks in practice for us, and maybe how I've lended my skills or my talent to that particular thing in the past could be widely different. And I hope that it is, because I actually want people who ask different questions than I might ask, who come with different experiences, who come from different industries. Oh my gosh, HR needs people from different industries all day long. So we can shake up some of these old practices and talent models and things that we're stuck in. So we want all of that diversity. But then the job is to build an environment that can actually celebrate those varying experiences and beliefs and all of that. And so it is interesting from a marketing perspective. I actually hope, I hope there are people listening to this who do product development, who do marketing and brand, who do corporate communications, marketing all day long, because what we're talking about, which is really seeking to understand human behavior, showing respect and honoring the whole person, and meeting them where they are, creating an environment where they can truly thrive. That example I gave earlier, how can you, the goal of any talent system, anybody who manages people inside their organization, the goal is to create an environment where they can do their best work, where they can truly thrive. If they don't even feel safe at work, how can they thrive? Yeah. If they don't feel like they belong, they just don't belong. How can they thrive? And so I think that the opportunity is really in creating an environment where people can fully show up and feel safe, feel a sense of belonging, and feel like they can contribute. And that a lot of that will tie to the shared values and sense of purpose that you create in that environment. And then you can bring all of the diversity of thought into the fold.
Yeah. Jess, do you think that, that's great approach, and you have such a clear framework for it. It's inspiring. a lot of what you talk about, or we're talking about, is, as I hear it, sort of a traditional DEI way of thinking about it. And I guess the question I have for you, and this is what I think where Dan and I are trying to get at with this conversation, is there something that's going on externally, with this kind of political polarization, cultural polarization outside of organizations that is different than it was? And is it beginning to have an effect inside organizations? Are we starting to have to deal with it? Or in the end, is this just another, after all said and done, this is just another part about building an inclusive environment and having to kind of bring in another construct, another factor in as you sort of thinking about that toward the goal, which you described very clearly, which is around values, and sort of here's the values, here's the shared values we have. We just need to get people who believe in these things and then, develop around these values, and then we're going to have a culture that's going to work. But do you think there's something, I guess, this is to use Dan's intro comments, is there sort of a dark shadow that's coming from outside that is changing things? Or is this just, in the end, just a progression of a increasingly more diverse world, and we just need to just continue to do the things we're doing to be able to address this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think just looking at where we are in this moment in time, this moment in history, we've just had one of the most polarizing world leaders in modern history, like the most polarizing. And we had an extremely polarizing and traumatic social justice event. And so I think we're having this conversation, and why this topic is worth pondering, is because people are finally, maybe it's a relief, I don't know, people are finally fed up with sort of the, and we did all of this while we were, navigating a global health pandemic. Maybe we're just tired of being so ambiguous and just floating. Floating is exhausting after a while. Maybe it finally feels good to say, enough, I've had it. This is what I want. I'm tired of, being somewhere in this spectrum and, existing in this gray matter. It does feel good. It feels good to take a stand, to speak your mind, to finally have a voice, to say what matters to you, and you're not going to get off this soapbox because it's the soapbox that you care about. I think that's definitely at play. And again, I think, back to like sort of the environmental, the psychological safety and the environment, if we give people a place where they can show up like that without it, alienating others, without disrespecting or not honoring the fact that not everybody thinks like you, it's all in sort of that environment that you create where it's safe to do that. It's safe to have an opinion, to have a point of view, and to speak it in a respectful way. I think we're lazy human beings. We don't practice good communication. We don't show empathy. We don't respect each other in ways that matter. We don't have conversations that are uncomfortable. We don't hold each other accountable. I think generally speaking, most humans are lazy, and we'd rather default to finger pointing and blame game and not exploring critical thinking. Like, what if? Well, talk to me about that. I love having conversations with people or about things that I know nothing about. I would love to understand that. Doesn't mean I agree, doesn't mean I'll embrace every part of it. I just want to understand what I don't understand today. And I would love to see everybody doing more of that.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, leads us to this obvious concept of having an open mind, right? Yeah. And we're all gonna hear perspectives that we don't agree with, and it's seeking to understand why someone might think the way they do or believe what they believe. And I think this is patience. I think this is having empathy. This is being curious, and I think this is being, again, I use this word fear because I think the reason people typically react to a different point of view is out of fear that they might be wrong. Mm-hmm. In most cases, and so you put up your quick defense is to say, well, no, that's not right, or you're for us to have a relationship or to be connected, you have to be on my side of the line. And I think this is that opportunity across teams and organizations, and it really does start with just lowering the temperature a little bit, having more open conversation, having leaders that can appreciate all walks of life. You know, we talk about the concept of listening more and understanding more. And I think this is where it needs to begin. And this holds true in everyday life too. This is not just within the workplace. And I think what Pat and I have really been, I guess our big question is this divide that we see in, you know, in society that really alienates people. You know, is this going to start to manifest itself in ways that we just can't control within organizational culture that, you know, through HR, through programs, through everything that we're talking about? Are we going to get to a place where it just becomes, you know, we have nothing to talk about? And I don't think it will, but I think that's the question. So how do we start to really allow and create an environment of you know, bringing in an open mind, bringing in open debate, open conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I love to, so I come from like recruitment and talent acquisition. I used to do employer brand work and recruitment marketing strategy. And my favorite thing to do was rip employee value propositions. Yeah. Like literally, I would go to a career site, or I would say, show me your EVP. Because it was always lip service. It was always very aspirational, and too often it was lip service. It was very lofty, ambiguous statements about, you know, what this company is going to achieve together, and it very rarely actually looked like that in practice inside the organization, and unless they were really, really good. If they were really realistic and really good about executing that internally. But I do think that's the answer. I think that organizations can exist for good. I think companies, think about systems and structures, collections of human beings aligned around a common purpose, whatever it is. I don't care if you're Zappos and you make shoes. I don't care what your services are that you sell as a company. You have a collection of human beings aligned around a common purpose that is work, but you can do good in the world at just the sheer volume of putting people together around shared values and purpose. And so whether it's communities, civic organizations, actual companies, government structures, any system or structure has power in the collection of human beings who are aligned around a common purpose. And so I think there's a huge opportunity in having a code of conduct, a corporate value system, a mission, a reason that your company exists in the world beyond the services that you provide. And if you can be really clear about that, I don't care how aspirational it is, but if you can be really clear about why you exist as a company and how you expect people to show up for you. And again, it all comes down to holding each other accountable. Celebrate those behaviors. Give people ways to live those behaviors every day, and incent and reward and celebrate when you see it happening. That's where I think we can mobilize people around shared purpose and common good. And I think it's possible. I think companies can do incredible work to change the world in our lifetime, but it comes down to leadership, top-down leadership. You have to show it, live it, act it, and then you have to give people the tools and the mechanisms to know how to show up for you. Yeah.
So it's beautifully said. And, you know, I think that's, you know, that is the opportunity and I think you're right. Organizations have a new responsibility. And I think some of the best change comes across companies. Everybody goes to work every day, and being connected to something greater than yourself, but also having a place you can show up as yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And I think if we can accomplish both of those things, so a place where you're safe, a place where you can be your authentic, true self, and be connected to a mission that inspires you, inspires the collective of who you're working with and who you're working for from a customer client standpoint, you know, that's the winning formula. It's a lot of work to get there.
It is a lot of work.
That's where we need to get.
And I think there's another part to it too. And, you know, we got into it a little bit last week when we talked to Ben Bratt and also Allison. You know, Ben used to be the director at HR at T-Mobile, and he did like an incredible job in building culture there. And he's a brilliant psychologist too. And he was talking about, I asked him, you know, from a you were to kind of break this down to the smallest node to kind of understand how people tick, you know, from like an employee experience design perspective, like where's the right place to kind of start the building block. And he said it's his idea of a meme. And when he says a meme, it's a shared value that two people hold together. I think that's sort of like the atomic level of organizations as you start to think about affinity. And you and Jason had Torrin Ellis on last week as well. I got to see quite a bit of that. Incredible conversation. I really appreciated that. And I know Torrin was saying that in a similar way, different way, when he talked about how we have to do work to find a connection together, you know, in organizations, right? Like there's all kinds of different histories that we bring in and different experiences, and we may, you know, judge someone initially because they're different than us. But if we do that extra work to find something that we have in common, then that's the beginning of that foundation of sort of trust, you know, and psychological safety that we start to build together. And if you kind of expand that into Ben's psychology model, it's like kind of two people at a time, one relationship at a time. It's like these little connections of trust, and you know, that we hold that can share together, and those can be very different things, you know. And so I do think that, you know, to your point, Jess, and we were talking about too, Dan, which is individuals too have to do that hard work. And I think leadership inspires this, but you know, we have to work for every team member we have as much as we can to kind of find those shared connection points, and that's how we start to bridge that trust level, and then we start to get to that psychological safety component that's going to be essential for any team or any organization to do its best work.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Jason literally asked Torrin Ellis, but I don't know what it's like to be a Black man, and I never will. That's such a powerful statement in itself. Just like we're sitting here having a conversation, you're men, I'm a woman. You don't know what it's like to be a woman or a mother or whatever other categories I fall into. But look at this, we're still able to talk because we're all humans, like we have humanity in common. And so I love that if we all, I think the starting point is everyone's different. How beautiful. Accept that everyone is different and add how beautiful. Like if we think that's a good thing, then it becomes easier to find the ties that bind. The commonalities, the shared purpose, the things that make us all tick. That's wonderful and amazing. And what a great foundation to start with. But if you also leave room for the differences because they're positive and powerful and they can contribute to something greater, you can build something greater than you might be able to do alone. And we're talking, I guess I'm an optimist. I naturally went to all of the beauty of diversity, and there is polarization that's necessary because some things are bad. They're just bad, and it would be hard for anybody to disagree with that. Racism is bad, treating people with disrespect is bad. Like it would be hard to argue any other way. But again, back to let's agree on what good human behavior looks like and how we're going to conduct ourselves as an organization. And we do expect everyone to adhere to that. Your example of, firearms in the workplace, or, say something like that. There are so many slippery slopes, and that's where, again, trust and respectful conversations come into play. To say, where are we going to actually put a stake on this one? Because you can't live on a slippery.
Exactly. And if I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry, Dan, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No. Well, I'm just going to, this concept of trust is so important. And I think the firearms example, I think, is an interesting one. Because trusting a team or trusting someone doesn't mean you're agreeing, right, with everything. It doesn't mean you have the same perspectives. It doesn't actually mean you hold the same belief system at all. Of course, it doesn't mean any of that. It means that you're comfortable enough and feeling safe enough to have an honest conversation. And I trust you to tell you how I feel. And I trust you'll respect my point of view. So I think if you think about the organization as a living, breathing entity, which I think, let's use that example. And an organization has a rule that will say no guns on premise. I might be a proud gun owner, but I have to respect that because I trust the organization has made that decision for the safety of its employees. And it's not a call out on me. It's not, I shouldn't take it personally. Well, I like guns. I like to strap a gun. I don't, by the way, but I'm using an example. You know, but you have to be willing to say, okay, I'm okay with that. I trust the organization. I respect that decision. Now let's get on to the work of the greater vision and the purpose and the mission and the why of the company. And if we can do that, right, that's the uncomfortable stuff that I think we all talk about and we have to get to. It's comfortable getting upset. It's easier to get upset or to disagree or ignore a conversation. It's much more uncomfortable and harder to have a conversation like that.
So to throw another wild card in, because I agree with both of you fully, but I'm going to keep pushing the conversation, which is which is, and Dan, you and I have chatted about this. I know for myself, and Dan, you've confessed to this as well, that we tread a little more gently in the world, certainly from a political value system, political perspective, meaning we just sort of avoid certain conversations because you sort of have learned, especially in the last, you know, over the last, say, 4 years, there's certain topics you sort of want to avoid, you know, because you're concerned where they're going to go, you know, because then they can, a situation that seems amiable and friendly as you're meeting someone, but also they can really go south quickly if people start to, you know, espouse certain belief systems, and then it can become polarized, and then we get into this, we kind of square off, and it's just a terrible situation that can happen quickly and easily. I've had personal experiences with that over the last few years that I had never had before, and that's, you know, I find that it's just, things are much more heightened. So so I just find myself more cautious personally, a little bit more cautious with conversations. I don't kind of show, you know, I you know, try to avoid certain topics. And I guess the question I have for you guys, is that okay? Is that, you know, is that the new reality, or should I have those conversations? But my personal experience is I've gotten into some situations that get sticky really quickly, and, you know, and I'm like, man, if I had just, you know, I thought I even tried to skirt around, you know, potentially polarizing conversation, but then it just goes, you know. So so anyway, I just kind of put that into, do we need, is there something different there that individuals carry, or is this, or am I just, maybe it's my own personal experience, maybe I've got some trauma I got to deal with, but is this you know, is this another piece to the puzzle?
I'd like to hear Dan's thoughts, actually.
It's that red cap that you're always wearing, Pat. You got to just.
I know.
That just.
I'm trying to avoid. I don't even want to say that because even that's polarizing. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm kidding. We're in good company here. Yeah, I mean, if you sort of take it out of the work context, I think having a debate about very different points of views, I think you have to first understand, what is your personal purpose? Are you trying to change someone's mind because it's what you believe? Or are you actually trying to change someone's mind because it's fundamentally bad what they believe, right? And then I think, and that is really relative to the individual. So I think it comes down to that. I mean, we fight for what we believe in, and we stand up for what we believe in. And so I think that's an important way to live. But I also think we have to be careful not to jump into conflict just to amplify what we believe in, understanding it might be a polarizing topic. So I guess that's sort of, at least that's how I live and breathe. And Pat and I have admitted on this podcast or show that we have family members that have very different points of view than us politically, and but we've had to find a way to connect. And I always use the expression, does it force us not to love them? Of course not, right? We will continue to love them. Do we have to agree with them? No. How do we function as a family is what's important, right? And it's that purpose that we hold as a family, and that is to be there for each other, to to support each other, to listen to each other, to guide each other. And I think those things can live separately and independently from very different points of polarized view. So Pat, I guess that's my answer. So I think there are things that we're just never going to agree. I think we need to find that. I guess it's find that common ground where we should connect. That's my perspective. Jess?
Yeah. I guess for me, it's sort of where you devote your energy and your resources. Is if I hear something that's so far from my understanding, and number one, I love interesting conversations and I always seek to understand. But if it's sort of one of those situations like we're just going to agree to disagree, my typical response is probably, oh, isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? And I don't actually consider my time on this planet, my job in the world, to be a missionary, to convert to people. That's not how I choose to invest my precious time and limited energy. I think I'm on the planet to do good in the ways that I can do good. And there are lots of ways. And that's where I choose to devote my energy. And so I'm going to think about social media and the conversations people have on social media with people they'll never affect, people whose lives will never intersect or overlap. There's really no outcome that can be gained by having this social conversation with people. It would be different. Like that might be worthy conversation if there could be, if there was something to be gained, if there was a positive outcome that could be achieved, if somebody felt respected or enlightened as a result of that conversation. That's rarely the case. And I just look at stuff like that and go, is that really, like, I have so many hours in the day. Is that really something that deserves my energy, or could I be doing something better as a human being? That's not to disrespect people. That's just, not where I'm probably going to spend my time.
Yeah. And that's so great, Jess. And you're right. Like this kind of Socratic approach to life, which is what we're supposed to do, which is debate things, and we can have different points of view, but we can approach it in a kind of constructive way. I think what we've learned, this is the downside to social media, is that we have learned, or some people have learned, to kind of become addicted to this, this negative behavior and connection points, because and I think, and so these behaviors start to reinforce themselves, right? People, it's Dan and I refer to it as sort of like the dark currents that move, out there.
Yeah.
And you're right, but we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is, and I completely agree with you, and believe it or not, I am an optimist, which is shed light on, shine a bright light on the world and do the right thing, and lead with purpose and a mission, and try to leave the world in a better place than how you found it. And I think that is our responsibility as individuals, and then that should manifest in work and life, and that all makes a lot of sense to me. But the thing, again, it's just, I guess this is the question: is there something that's changing out there? Is that work going to get harder? What we just described, is there more to overcome?
Yeah, I'm a quick response to that, and then Jess, I know you want to jump in. First of all, you're my brother, so you have to be an optimist, at least 50%.
Well, Dan knows
I'm a complete optimist. I know, I'm kidding. But I guess my thought, Pat, and we've talked about this, and is, yes, there's harder work to be done. And I think there is more divide, absolutely. Like Jess stated, we've had 4 years of division unlike we've ever experienced. And so that is going to require, we talk about empathy, and it will require more listening and understanding. And the way we do that is we have to just keep having these conversations, right? We have to keep making this top of mind. We have to make it okay to have an uncomfortable conversation. And this is why we're doing shows like this, right? This is why I know Leapgen does this with their clients, and we do this with our clients, having these, having uncomfortable conversations about change that might need to take place, or reviewing values, making sure we're really living them, and reviewing mission statement and purpose, and what it means to take a stand and accept the backlash that might come with it. And I think these are all things that it's different now, and it's a different world. And so it is that renewed priority on kind of understanding and listening and empathy and intentionality and grace and love, right? And I know that it's a word we use a lot, and it's a word that Jess and Leapgen uses a lot. So Jess, I'm going to turn the mic to you to help close us out here. And
yeah, we're having such an incredible conversation, and all of the words you just used are very common words in our vernacular as experienced designers. And so when we bring this home to the people function, inside any organization. HR needs to understand their role is to create empowering experiences for their workforce, period. And so if you didn't before understand that you were the listeners of the organization, that you were the designers of experience, that you had to understand the role of technology in delivering personalized, relevant experiences at scale. Like if you didn't understand that this was your job before, your job is, yes, it's somebody's job to process payroll and manage employee relations and keep your people compliant. Like it's, yes, that's a job too. But the loftier opportunity and the real meaning of designing experiences for people when it comes to work is around everything you just said. Listen, understand, meet people where they are, show them care in lots of ways, show them care and love, give them support mechanisms and resources that are unique to each one of them. And people, you know, it's hard to imagine personalization at scale. That's the power of technology. Technology makes that possible. Yes, do the persona work and understand who's inside your organization and develop some constructs around that. But the opportunity of technology is that you can let people drive their own experience. You can let them access the resources and the mentorship and the career pathing and the leadership support that they need, that's unique to them. You can do this by putting, you know, democratizing some of these processes that we've always had when it comes to workforce experience and managing talent and bringing people through an organization. You democratize it by putting it in their hands. Technology allows you to do that, and let them, it's sort of like choose your own ending books, right? Let them drive their experience, let them show up, meet them at the table. And so to kind of like really bring this full circle, everything you just said, all of those words around empathy and design and listening and showing love and care, that's the opportunity for HR, and technology can help you do that. There are no excuses anymore. The only thing you should be concerned about is the happiness of your people.
Yeah, well said.
That's a mic drop, ending, Jess.
We heard Jason in this conversation. Jason was so jealous we were talking about this today. What a great thing to geek out about, right?
Yeah.
It is. Experience and that's the future.
Well, and I think, and just to put language and context around it too. And I think one thing, you know, I'll admit, and Pat, I think you can admit this too, in this, you know, sometimes we get too comfortable with kind of buzz language, and we talk about employee experience and whole person experience, and it's really getting practical and starting to unpack and dissect what do we really mean by that. And that's why I really appreciate this conversation. And Jess, your perspective on this is incredible. And, you know, we talk about humanizing work, and there's a lot of hard work to do that, but it starts with conversations like this. It starts with you know, leaders who can start to be more empathetic, who can listen more. It starts with missions and values that everyone can connect to and align to. And like you said, Jess, I mean, leveraging technology, leveraging programs, I mean, this is all an important part of scaling this too. So there were some good questions here, and we were in such a great conversation. Allison, thank you for your comment. I was just reading through it. Can't wait till the org strips down to the nubs and welcomes the people that they need at the time they need it. Goes on, but thank you for that, and absolutely, come the revolution. Indeed. Yeah. So anyway, I appreciate Jess. Thank you so much for taking your hour out of the day. And Pat, as always.
Oh yeah, it's been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much, Jess. It's just been, I know we'll continue this conversation on at another time in another way, but it's really important. And thank you for all the incredible work you do at LeapGen. And before we lose you, any other, what's next for LeapGen? What's going on with you guys this week or into next week? Anything the audience should know about?
Yeah, you know, we do a show like this on Fridays. Tomorrow's guest is Rocky Howard. She's the Chief Diversity Officer at Smart Recruiters. And we talk a lot about humanizing diversity. We tend to fall into, like, it's easy to go straight to race and gender when you talk about diversity, but there's all kinds of diversity. So in an interesting way, it's sort of a, you know, a different flavor of this kind of topic. And we're previewing all of the keynote speakers of Spring HR Tech. So we've had a bunch. That's how you heard Torin and Josh Burson a couple of weeks ago. We've got all of the rest of the keynotes coming up on our show. And then there's Spring HR Tech itself, which is just around the corner. First time they've done a spring show, and they're swearing, the team is swearing that we're all going to be together in Vegas this fall at the end of September.
Yes. It's got to happen. We're going to probably have masks on, but we'll be there.
I will definitely have masks
right.
on. It will look way different than what we're used to experiencing on a conference circuit. But what a thing to wish for and think about and dream for, you know? We're all going to be together again soon.
I know. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, on that,
thank you so
optimist
much for having me.
Our pleasure, and thank you. Enjoy the spring day in Minneapolis.
Yes, absolutely. You guys too.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
See you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. See ya. Bye-bye.